Let's see. Chow reminded me we got a quiz coming up. Thank you, Chow. We've got a quiz coming up next week on November 8th. So that's next Thursday. So that means on Tuesday we're going to be reviewing for the quiz chapters 8, 9, and 10. So 9 is advertising. 8 is what we're doing today. We're finishing up on audience measurement. 10 is social media. So we'll have a chance to introduce some basic ideas and questions about social media on Tuesday. We'll review the Kahoots for advertising and ratings. So today at the end of class, let's do the ratings Kahoot just to see how we're doing. And so we should be in good shape, ready for quiz number 2 next Thursday. And righto, so that's good. Is that that is not going to be a mandatory day for folks, so I guess we'll have some people taking it online, some people taking it in class, right? So 11/7 or 11/9, and well, those dates don't make much sense there. Industry news coming up on November 15th. So let me see, what day have I got here for the? Oh, that's interesting. I got a mandatory day coming up. And I'm going to have to sort that out. So we wanted to go for November 15th for that presentation. We definitely need time to work up to it. So that is going to have to be changed right away with an email out to everybody. The problem is I get put so many dates into all of these documents, and then I change it in 1-2 places, and it's still like floating around in the last place. So let's see. Okay, I'll have to take this up with you by email, but that's not a good thing. Confusing. We don't want confusion. Okay. Whatever it is, there's definitely a quiz next Thursday. And as to the mandatory attendance day, I'm going to push that off until November 15th. Those of you who can't make it because it's a shock and a surprise, because up here it says 11/7 or 11/9, you'll be able to turn something in online, just as we've done for our other in-class exercises and stuff. So that's what I'll write up and send out as an email. So 11/15, that's coming up. So, right. Well, let's dig back into ratings and what we were doing with that. All right. Let's quickly recap where we got to last class, and so we did our best to cover pretty much media in the development of audience measurement and where we're at currently with linear broadcast media. So some things to remember: the Odometer, which was Nielsen's big foray into early rating systems. They were very successful with the Odometer. Remember, that was a little kind of ticker tape that went into your radio, and whenever you moved the dial, it would record where you had moved to. So that was sort of a more objective type of audience measurement than just calling people up and asking them, you know, what they were listening to. And let's see. And then we moved on. We were talking about how audience measurement is organized. So the country is broken into what are called DMAs, designated market areas. Okay, there's a couple of hundred here in the United States. The Bay Area is one of them. San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland is all in one DMA. And so that is, you know, when you're in the business of competing with other stations for ratings, this is who you compete against, and everybody else who's in your DMA, your designated market area. So that's where that is. Now, radio, historically and still in many of those 200 markets, radio is measured using diaries. So people get the participants in the sample, and there may be a few hundred participants in any area. I have, over all these many years, I've had once a student who actually had participated in this as part of a sample. So you get a diary, you fill it in over the week, you send it back, and people who are employed by Nielsen go through all the diaries and mark them out and create this statistical picture of what you listen to all week. Incredibly time consuming, and also, still vulnerable to some inaccuracy. So the PPM has come in, which is a little electronic device that picks up codes which are embedded in radio and television programs. You can't hear them, but the PPM picks them up, and then it knows what you are listening to, and it turns in like a digital account of all of this at the end of the day. It's more precise, it's less work. Nielsen doesn't have to employ droves of people to read diaries. So some big advantages there. So that is the PPM. So would you say that the PPM has completely eliminated inaccuracy in ratings, or do you think there's still some inaccuracy possible there with the PPM, and what would it be? Just think through any of the possible problems that you could have with audience. Remember, audience measurement has to be a sample that reflects the population. Does the PPM literally solve that issue of having to reflect the population or not?
Sorry, what was the question?
Question is, with the PPM, which has eliminated some basis of error in audience measurement, for instance, forgetting what stations you actually listen to, the PPM in this case is a little electronic device. It knows what you're listening to, but it hasn't eliminated the problem of a representative sample of the population, for instance. Who gets...
No, it would have to hit a much wider range of people. I mean, I'm aware of this system, but I've never known anyone to have one.
Well, yeah, that's not the question, but your answer initially was perfectly true. That because the PPM isn't, there's not one in the pocket of every listener, but in fact only a small sample of the DMA, the designated market area, only a small sample from there, like a few hundred people would have a PPM. So absolutely right, because it's not one in everybody's pocket, we're counting on the PPM being distributed to just the right percentage of people. That's basically it. If there are 100,000 Spanish-speaking natives here in our DMA, we've got to make, and that's 10%, let's say, of the DMA, we've got to make sure that 10% of our sample actually is reporting, has those PPMs, those meters. And the thing is, that's still a big problem. Recruiting people who want to spend the time and have a little device. I mean, would you guys be at all concerned about carrying around a device that listens all the time to everything that you hear?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't like that necessarily, yeah. And I don't know, Lonnie or Michael, like if someone was willing to pay you, I don't know, $1 or $2 a month, or let's say deduct $1 from your phone bill. But the deal was that the phone would always be monitoring like all the sound that's around you, like for television and radio. You wouldn't? Lonnie, you're shaking your head. You wouldn't go for that. How come?
I don't know. I just find it weird. I feel like it's getting into your personal life and stuff like that.
Yeah. I would feel that way too, right? It is a mic. Michael?
It feels like, they're gonna listen to every conversation, everything you're going on. What you're gonna be talking about. It's kind of weird. It's like when people say, "Oh yeah, when you're on the phone, the government's listening to you."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely when you're in your email, Google is listening to you, right? They don't really care, I think, about exactly what you're saying, but they're scanning all the words in your emails to see if you talk about anything that's marketable or whatever. So in some ways online we have some invasion of privacy that we're willing to give up, but maybe this would be too far to have a listening device. It sounds like it, Yeah. But maybe if it was $5 a month off your bill, they would, right? And your phone's certainly capable of it. And you know, we may see, you know, audience measurement moving to that as soon as everyone's got a phone. Wow, that would be easier. Let's see, where else do we get here? So even though the PPM, this portable people meter, the PPM portable people meter, has solved a lot of problems, it hasn't completely eliminated the possibilities for errors. We're going to get to the internet. Let's see. We talked about ratings and share, right? And so maybe we could come back to that a little later on at the end of today. But we know that the basic calculation always starts with the number of impressions, let's say 100,000 impressions. So this would refer to the number of people who heard a radio show or the number of households that were tuned into a channel. And then over what they call a universe, we saw this with the Muppets. So that would be impressions over universe. Let's say if there's 1 million people in the Bay Area DMA, 100,000 over 1 million would be a 10% rating. So that's the basic calculation for rating, and we also saw that share is a little different. But we should come back to that when we actually do a problem or something. So, but, you know, one thing that we could say is, since the share is only estimating the number of people who actually had their radio or TV on at that time, so their universe is smaller, the share is always going to be higher, which makes it a more impressive number to show to advertisers and stuff. Because really, you know, ratings is one of the key reasons to do ratings, is to tell your advertisers, hey, we got 10% of the Bay Area watching us last night. You should advertise with us. You know? Okay, so, and I think that's pretty much the most important stuff that we got to. We did say that, you know, the ratings are conducted. There are different types of ratings that are done, let's say in television. So Nielsen, for instance, does one set of ratings about the whole country, which is primarily for the networks and the national advertisers. They want to know if, for instance, CBS is reaching, you know, 2/3 of the country or whatever. And then they'll do the station index, which is for your local station. So this type of rating is important for, let's say, KTVU, that's going out and competing with KRON, KRON, for advertising dollars. So at this level, they want to know week by week what is going on in your local market, right? So those are different. You don't need the NTI, the big national index, all the time. In fact, they do it 4 times a year during what they call sweeps, right? Which always reminds me of sweepstakes. They call these the sweeps, which are 4 times a year, where they spend the big bucks and, you know, monitor the whole country. Yes, Michael?
Chapter is this?
This is chapter 8. Yeah.
I was like, is it 8 or 7?
Yeah, it's 8. Yeah. Advertising, yeah, it's true, because advertising and audience measurement kind of fold in together, right? Because the advertisers are so interested in the ratings that, particularly when you get to online, which we really should do now. So let's jump into online, and here we go. The internet is a little bit different. Well, let's say there are various audience measurement services for the internet. Some of them look a lot like broadcast, in the sense that they use smaller panels of participating internet users, and they estimate, you know, the larger audience based on that. But there's a lot of differences that make that less efficient. Number one is the internet is not geographically bounded. So there are not those DMAs to kind of contain and compare what's going on in the Bay Area. When you're on the internet, you're like all over the global internet, right? So that's different. And so, you know, Nielsen does have a panel, an audience panel, 200,000 users, right? Monitoring the use of 30,000 sites. So that is considerable. They pour a lot of energy into that. But then there's also another way of treating this like a census, which is basically, from the outside, without asking people to participate and rewarding them to be part of a panel. You monitor activity, let's say from the outside, which is just tracking who goes where, who does what. And so basically, for every individual user, you get some kind of trail of their activity and what they're doing. So competing services are quite different to the sample-based Nielsen approach. Some of them are kind of census-based. In other words, everybody using is counted. It's not an estimate. It's an actual number of everybody using. And those come from various third parties, like ComScore is a big one. So all of this means that, in broadcasting, Nielsen is the one and only, what they say goes. It's the reality of audiences for the business. But on the internet, you may look at Nielsen and they got a list of the top 10 sites, and then you may go to ComScore and they got a different list, and then it's like, well, who do we trust? Who should we? So the lack of standardized data collection means that there's a lot more uncertainty regarding what the audience actually looks like. Is nowhere near as straightforward as with Nielsen. There are different industry groups that are trying always to pin this down, but just as soon as they started trying to digest and get used to what the internet ratings could be, conceived of as, mobile comes in, and then you got mobile ratings, and it's just a very different game each time, So for now, there's a good deal of uncertainty there, and with that uncertainty, Facebook and Google become very powerful, like what's different about them? CBS, when they go and they try and sell advertising, they say, yeah, look, this third-party Nielsen, they actually can tell us what our audience is. If you're doing business with Facebook and Google, is like they're selling you the ad and they're also telling you what the audience is, because nobody else is really measuring that well. So in a sense, they group together those two functions, which is potentially iffy, but they have literally billions of people in their audiences, and so they have to do that in a way. But it's a big change, exactly. So in ratings, we're always talking about kind of head counts, and we don't have a very good understanding of why people pick up content. So because all we do is track, oh, so and so watched this show at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. We don't know why, and so there are other forms of marketing research and audience measurement that try to dig into that in a different way. There are, the usual demographics that Nielsen tracks, how old the audience is, their gender, their ethnicity, their language, stuff like that. Gives way also to psychographics, like things that they do, their attitudes and values, their income, their education, stuff like that. Technographics is like if you're trying to sell them devices, you want to know what their attitudes towards technology are. So these are a second set of data, which Nielsen will often combine. So, I don't have the reports anymore. They don't make them public. You have to pay for them as, Nielsen, you have to subscribe to Nielsen in order to get all the info. But in addition to all of their linear audience measurement, they include psychographics. And in fact, they're all either associated or owned by the same, big vertical market research companies. So, you will find out who listens to country music, but you'll also find out, whether they drive a pickup, whether they like fishing versus volleyball, where they last went in the last year or two, attitudes and values. There's, various kinds of ways that those are attributed, and do they buy fast food? Do they buy, baby materials? All these things are monitored and combined in with the audience data to make this more useful for advertisers and stuff. So these last few slides are sort of about other forms of audience research. So for getting into the why you wanted to buy or subscribe to Spotify or whatever, they do different type of research, which is small panels are convened like with 10, 12 people, and they are played examples of music or of other kinds of programming, and then they gather the opinions of people based on that. So in old radio, they used to call people up and play them hooks and then say, do you like this song? Do you think this will work? That kind of has been more centralized now. So there are services which receive the latest releases in pop music, sometimes before they're actually available for streaming. And they basically have panels that receive the hooks and tell you, oh, I think that'll be a great song. I don't think that's such a good song. I don't like it. And that will be information that the major distributors use to see whether they should pour a lot of money into promoting something or not. So there's that type of stuff. In terms of TV programs, you've probably all heard about these big auditorium research things that are done for film and for television. So there's some in Las Vegas, for instance, where it's kind of like, because you have a lot of people with leisure time when they go to Las Vegas. And so the way this one works is, the way this one works is that they will, there'll be this like attraction. It's like at 2 o'clock, come see the latest movie. They won't tell you too much about it, but you go in, you sit down, it's a new film, and you have a little meter there with a dial. And as they show you the film, you like turn and say, oh, I love this part. And it's like, this is boring. You turn it to the left. Oh, I like this part. You turn it to the right. And so you watch the whole film and or television show, and they come away reacting plot, characters, humor. Sometimes they even re-edit the end of the movie in order to respond to this type of data. So that is, of interest. There's even some research which basically wires up audiences and tries to see how they physiologically react to stuff as well. So it's not just whether they like it or they don't, but whether it makes their heart beat faster and stuff, which is pretty wild. So yeah, that's one of the things they do with TV programs and stuff. So the important thing on this slide is CPM. And so this addresses the way that we can decide, should we buy in a magazine? Should we buy on television? Should we buy social media or display advertising on a website? The way that the industry determines that is with this measurement called CPM, which is cost per thousand. So this is where you, look through all the ad sales and their success at reaching people, and they determine how much it cost you to reach 1,000 people. And then you can decide whether you want to use television or the internet or whatever. So let's see, we have here, I used to have a great resource, but this one is from 2015, not quite as good. But, down here, this may actually, this makes it easier for us to see on one page, basically. But, the different types of advertising are, displayed out here. And as you can see, so spot TV for a minute on TV it ranges from $8 to $18, with the average at $8.99. So that's excluding prime time. And then when you get into prime time, it's between $32 and $36. So that means that it costs you, let's say, $36 to reach 1,000 people in your audience, right? So if you want to reach 100,000 people in your audience, then multiply that by 100 and you get, the cost there. So for each 1,000 people, it's $36. And then, looking down here, you can see mobile, much cheaper, $5 per 1,000 people. General display, so what this means is kind of the average of all the different display types on the web, $6. Premium display, if you're taking over a website or something like that, which they often do, they'll sell you, today for the next 2 days, you can have every ad on the home page of this, of Vox or whatever. So $12 to reach 1,000 people. So anything you notice about this in terms of costs? Like if you were looking around to decide, where do I want to spend my money? How would you be thinking about this? Would you necessarily go to mobile, let's say, because it's $5, just because it's the cheapest, or what would you do? What would you be thinking about?
Well, I suppose it depends on what my product is.
That's a good point. Yeah, and your target audience, right? So mobile, it might make sense if you want to reach somebody who's on the move on their phone, or you've got a product which seems particularly suited to being put onto the phone.
But if my product is designed to target boomers, then that doesn't make any sense to me.
Good point. Yeah. And so then, what might you pick then?
Probably primetime television.
Yeah.
Just because that, and I'm sure there's some like print magazine at the bottom here. Yeah, it's probably another useful one.
Yeah.
For targeted audience.
Yeah. I was shocked last week when we looked into the advertising. We were doing the advertising exercise and we looked into the magazine. There were so few ads in there compared to when I was growing up. And look at the cost. Magazines between $8 and $20 depending on the magazine. But that's far more than any online advertising costs. Newspapers, even more incredible, $32.50 CPM to advertise in a newspaper. And I think what's going on there is that newspapers, the circulation has gone lower and lower and lower, and so you're paying a lot of money to get into a newspaper compared to online. But as William is kind of, I like your logic, William. Basically, he's saying that it depends on who your target audience is and what kind of media they use. And it depends on the product that you are, advertising. And of course, we all know, like some of the most expensive ads on TV would be like for the Super Bowl or something like that. And that's where you're getting literally hundreds of millions of people who are watching your ad, and you're getting people writing about your ad and stuff. So there's a possibility that television is going to reach the biggest, broadest audience. But as you see, the prices vary a lot. So again, the prices that we're looking at is the cost per 1,000 people, and that's CPM is what we use. And so it allows you to compare and say, I have this campaign for my new video game. I'm probably going to be putting it up as premium display. I've got a new release of this loved title, and I'm going to, invest in putting it up in premium display, $12 to reach 1,000 people in that medium, and I'm not probably going to go up to television and spend $36 per 1,000 to reach a very broad audience of whom only a fraction of them are probably video game users. So that is the all-important CPM, what that is. So CPM, cost of the spot or schedule, divided by the number of individuals or households times 1,000. So basically this is the cost of 1,000 people, okay? So you reach in that medium. Yeah, so here, So this is, as you know, as we said, this is where audience ratings and advertising kind of crosses over, basically, because the CPM is you're counting the number of audiences, but you're integrating into that a price for advertising to them. So we're in this kind of overlap of advertising and audience measurement. In here, the pricing for radio and television. I think I flashed a kind of a chart at you last week, which had, you know, the cost of a minute of radio for all of the iHeart radio stations back in the day. And so those would be the base rates, which would be how much you would expect to spend per minute. And it was like about $900 just cash to buy one. And we saw that in the day parts, the prices would be different depending on whether, you know, you had a big audience during the morning drive or overnight. The price fell to about a tenth of what it was during the busiest day parts. And the same thing in TV. You know, the day part is like prime time is the big expensive day part. So that makes a difference. There are a few kind of discount packages that come out. In radio stations, you can get what's called a run of schedule, which is where instead of like saying, I want particularly to be my spots to be in the morning drive on Monday through Friday, you can say, okay, give me a deal and you can choose where to put my spots. So the radio station decides where they're going to fit you in, and you get a big discount because they're, you know, filling up unused advertising time versus the rest of the folks who are getting a fixed buy where they are determining exactly when stuff is going to play. There is a question we'll have on the Kahoots about what's called cooperative advertising. So this is where a manufacturer and a retailer get together and pay for the ad themselves. So a co-op advertising example would be, let's say Toyota they've got a good deal on one of their cars that's not selling fast enough. So they want to advertise it. And so Toyota will go in with all the local dealerships, and Toyota will pay half, and the retailer will pay half. And together they will, cooperate to pay for the ad. And this is exciting for radio and television stations. They want to know about this so that their ad sales teams can go and say, hey, Toyota dealer, we know that you've got this great arrangement. So this is really only going to cost you half because Toyota, the national company, will pay the other half. So it's a good deal. Yeah?
Really quick, going back to run of schedule, not having like the agency to decide of where these your advertisements are being placed in schedule, would that be based off of you're just buying so many slots that you're essentially just flooding the station with advertisements? So and because you're buying them at such a discount, you aren't really concerned about where they get put in the day?
That's correct. That's exactly right. Nobody buys just one spot, or even a fixed buy will be bought in what they call a flight, which means you'll be buying hundreds at a time over several months. But a fixed buy would mean that you would buy over 3 months. You would still have it play between 8 and 9 a.m. So many times X, Y, and Z. Versus the run of schedule, it could be anywhere. It's true. But the radio station gives you the best available times. And so, even when you go for run a schedule, you may actually get into some prime time if there is any unsold inventory there. So they usually promise to give you the best.
So you could end up paying, buying a discounted slot in a very expensive time frame. Oh.
Yeah, if they haven't sold it. Yeah, right. So, yeah, good questions, definitely. Let's just see what we got here in terms of internet stuff. Again, let's just get out of this full screen here. Full screen, thank you. All right, cool. We looked at the major CPMs. Where are we here? Online advertising. Okay. So here's the cost models for online media. So again, we're still in the overlap of audience measurement and costing. So this is just...
Nothing in life is free, and this is particularly true of online advertising. Ad space is sold by website publishers. These include news sites, blogs, weather sites, sports sites. You get the picture. Publishers charge different rates, though, for their ad space. How they calculate cost is going to depend largely on their client's goals. If an agency wants to boost brand awareness by wallpapering the internet with their clients' advertisements, for example, they'll probably use the CPM model. CPM stands for cost per thousand impressions. An example CPM might be $10 to secure top space on a popular website's homepage. If the client is more focused on response rate, though, like driving traffic to a new part of their website, the agency may choose instead the CPC, or cost per click model. An example CPC could be 10 cents per click. Advertisers may also use what's called the CPA model when they want more bang for their buck. This could be a desire to drive sales, increase email signups, or get more people to request a quote online. All of these events are valuable depending on what the client's goals are. We call these valuable events conversions. For example, the publisher gets paid when the visitor sees the ad on their site and makes a purchase. There's no guarantee that someone is going to click an ad, let alone buy something on the advertiser's site. Because of this, publishers take on more risk when using the CPC or CPA models. This is why CPC and CPA rates are typically more expensive than CPM rates. CPM, CPC, and CPA, these three little acronyms make a big difference in how publishers get paid.
So more acronyms to take account of, but what we are really just pointing out here is the different ways that online can offer, more valuable, and where are we here on this? Yeah, CPPs, CPCs. Here we go. This is what we want. So what we saw is that your basic comparison can be based on the cost per thousand impressions. And all that means is somebody sees your television commercial or they visit the website where your banner ad or skyscraper ad, which runs up the side. So they've seen it, right? And so that is where print and television and the internet can all be compared. But then you get into what the internet can do that nobody else can, which is we can actually see if the person cared enough about it to click and get further information on an ad. So here it would be CPC, which as we saw is more expensive because there are going to be way fewer people who click on something to learn more about it than there would be who simply just cruise to the website and are possibly exposed to your ad and possibly pay attention. So CPC, cost per click, actually gets more, it costs more because less people do it. And then CPA is the riskiest proposition again for a provider, which is they only get paid when somebody actually does something, orders or signs up and subscribes or puts their name on a list, an email list or something. So that's cost per action. So that's, you're going to have the least number of conversions through CPA, which means that they're going to cost more. They're going to be more expensive based on that. Interesting activity that we saw in the early days of blogging, and it's still going on, but basically the business opportunity has passed and this has matured, but our online ad networks. And what's interesting here is just the way that early television stations got together in networks and we're able to sell advertising and make money on a broader scale that way. Same thing happened online, where if you were a blogger and you maybe started a blog and started getting traffic and wanted to support yourself that way, you didn't necessarily have time to become an advertiser at the same time and start selling space on your blog pages and stuff. So ad networks came about, which would take literally hundreds of blogs, combine their audiences together, and sell advertising based on that. So you maybe only got 10,000 people a month looking at your site if you were lucky. But when you put together 100 of those sites and you get an audience that is 1 million strong, then it becomes worthwhile selling, for instance, CPM impressions on that whole network of websites that have come together. So it was a way of lots of little websites banding together and becoming a big audience, which was saleable. So that's ad networks were important that way. So let's see what else. We made mention of Facebook and those really big companies that were so big in a sense that they provide their own research into their audiences and then charge the price based on that research. So there's an interesting interview with a marketing exec from Facebook talking about this. It gets interesting around a couple minutes in, so let's just...
Data from Burberry and John Lewis out of the UK. We see beautiful films from Nike, Procter & Gamble's Thank You.
So they're talking about their online video. I think it's around here.
Most people experience their environment, their advertising on their mobile phones with their sound off, because they're doing it perhaps in a meeting or perhaps in a crowded environment. And so how you think about communicating your message with sound off is also a new muscle that marketers are thinking about. Interestingly enough, one of the categories that has thought about sound off forever has been the alcohol and beverage category, because they assume when you walk into a bar or a local pub that you may not hear what's on the television, but you can see it. And they do a lot of their advertising in those environments. And so that's the one category that I have found that is very, clued in to sound off, but many other marketers are just learning.
Here we go.
Measurement systems for the last 20 years, when digital started, have been cookie-based. And that worked when you had a single desktop that you were engaged with, but now the average consumer, particularly in developed markets, have multiple devices. They may check their phone in the morning, they may use their tablet on the train if they're commuting, they may show up at their office and have a desktop. At night, they may experience some content on their tablet and then go back to their phone. So as a marketer, you need to be able to send that message to the consumer on all of those different devices, and then most importantly, be able to measure what is actually happening. And so we have something at Facebook called Atlas, which is a technology that we acquired from Microsoft. We had to rebuild it from scratch, but it is based on people's identity so that you can target and measure across device. I think we're in the earliest stages of that transition from cookie-based measurement to actual unique identity. I think we're seeing a very big trend in the blurring of what we would traditionally call brand and DR. And I think that is basically because of the tools we have access to now in digital marketing, where you can do both very effectively and very almost simultaneously. So an example of that in Canada is A&W, where they had very specific brand objectives to make their consumers aware that they had very healthy ingredients for chicken and beef and eggs and all the ingredients that they were focused on. So they had some awareness challenges that they wanted to make sure people knew what their ingredients held. So you would call that traditional brand. And yet we measured that and we had terrific success. But also at the end of the day, A&W wants to have more consumers come in and actually buy products and actually buy more of their food and drinks. And so they had a 23% sales lift. And what they were able to quickly do is not only show big brand awareness and campaigns, but actually work people down very quickly through the funnel based on who was interested in that messaging, and then measure the effectiveness of whether we drove people into the actual store. We have Burberry that during the holiday season did a beautiful 2-minute video from lunch London with Love. It was a gorgeous film, engaged people, and based on who actually engaged with the video, Burberry then could quickly retarget them and use all of our sophisticated targeting products like custom audiences, and then go in and target them with very specific products that they may enjoy. They also complemented that with a great campaign on Instagram using hyperlapse. And so what we're starting to see is that you can do a video, a brand, what we would call a typical brand awareness campaign or video, and based on the consumer's interaction with that video, we can retarget them with very specific messages and products of interest to them to try to drive actual, what we would call traditional DR or calls to action.
Okay. Oh, all right. So, I guess there's even more acronyms in there. I want to spare you from all of that, but what we're seeing there is, a good example of what the internet can provide that older forms of media, had a great deal of difficulty providing, which was the idea that you could, follow the actual individual through their exposure to different advertising. So as in the example she was talking about, is a perfect example. In old media, you would have put up a fancy television advertisement, and then the company would also be monitoring cash register sales. And they might have a kind of an indirect connection between the television ad and a boost in sales. And they would say, well, we think the TV ad is driving more people to the store, but we don't really know exactly that. They may just have been more hungry. But now with something like Facebook or any of the other social media sites which can actually track people as individuals, you can show them a TV commercial, but if you show it to them online, you know exactly who saw it. And then you can follow them into, you can target them with very specific advertising, send them coupons or something like that. So there's a reduced price if they go in the next couple of weeks. And they may print that coupon or show it when they go buy lunch or something like that. And then you've really closed the circle as a marketer using your audience research, basically, because now your research tells you exactly who consumed exactly what. And you can, using old school devices like coupons or promos or anything like that, know if they did show up and actually make a purchase. Or it could, if it's for something that you can actually access and purchase online, you don't even have to worry about, giving them a coupon. You can just see them do it on their device or on the internet. This is, as we said earlier, 90% of revenue is still coming through old linear methods, but this is the future, which is of real interest to marketers. So if this is the equation for ratings, and then CPM would be the number of impressions. It would be the cost over the number of impressions times 1,000 to reach these people. So let's just try to do a little bit of calculating now. And if it's not your forte, don't worry. We just want to try. If it is your forte, fantastic. Well, so let's say we're talking about ratings. So this is old television ratings. So let's say we're in a universe always of a million people universe. So let's say we had the Super Bowl, let's say, and let's say 200,000 people watched the Super Bowl. So this is our example in our market. So what would be the ratings for that? 200,000 people. So we're basically looking at 200,000 over a million. Anyone want to help us step through it?
It's 20%.
It would be 20%. Absolutely, I agree. Can we just work out how we figured that out? We could, just easily cross out some zeros, right? And so if a percentage is out of 100, it would be 20 over 100. So that would be a quick and easy way of doing it, right? So this would be rating. But now let's say we wanted to calculate share. And so let's say only 800,000 people had their TVs on. So the universe is different, right? It's only in share, we're only measuring who had TV on, but it's still the same number of people who are watching, 200,000. So what is the share for this event?
25.
25%. Okay, thanks, William. You're jumping over. So in this case, we could take out 3 zeros, 200 over 800. We could quickly boil that down to sort of 1 over 4, which would be a 25% share. So this is all that we have to do in this class. We're not a math class. So now which number is higher? 25%, right? So it confirms the basic rule that we were talking about, which is share is higher than rating, okay? Because rating is based on all of the households with television, whether or not they had the TV on. So that is just every possible viewer in your DMA, in your designated market area. Versus share is only the people who had their TVs on. And now a lot of people had their TVs on because it was a big Sunday night or something. But not everybody, of course, watched the Super Bowl. Only 200,000 did in this market area. So we boil it down to 25% share. And we see share is usually higher than ratings, for sure. Okay, now let's come over here, CPM. So this is a very different calculation. No need to have this up. I'd prefer to have, perhaps the actual slide, which would be useful to us. So let's head back into here. And there we are. So that's at least something about CPM. So remember, CPM is the cost of what it costs to reach 1,000 people. So let's say we spent, $1,000 is a very small buy, but we sent $1,000 and we recorded out of that 100 impressions. In other words, 100 people were actually exposed to our ad. And so that would be a cost of, $10 per impression. And then the CPM is, well, how much did 1,000 cost? So it would be $10 times 1,000. So, it would be a CPM of 10,000. Very, very expensive. But what the heck? An example anyway. And as we saw, the real world examples tended, depending on the media, went anywhere from, $36 for your primetime, premium primetime spots to, $5 and $6 for your mobile or your general display ads and stuff. So it's much cheaper to advertise online. Okay, so those are a few little calculations that we could do. And as I said, whatever calculations I give you on a quiz or an exam are going to be like pretty easy ones. And it's going to be multiple choice too. So let's just see what these look like here. So I'm suggesting that we do the Kahoots for this one, and we're bound to find that I've forgotten something. So this is a good way of making sure that I cover everything I hope to cover. And bring that up. Kahoot. Let's launch a Kahoot for Chapter 8. And so next week we'll do the Kahoots for the rest of what we need. So yeah, we do have a quiz next Thursday, remember? So next week we'll be doing the Kahoots to kind of preview questions for that quiz. So Nielsen's Odometer was first used to measure which of the following? Primetime viewers starting in 1960, television station viewers in the 40s, radio and TV audiences starting in the 50s, or radio station listeners in the 30s. So how far back in history did they actually go? All right, 2 people got it back. So the odometer goes way back into the 1930s, with radio, in fact. And they still use not the odometer itself, of course, which is the old school version of it, but they're using the PPM now, the portable people meter, and the set-top box still has the name of odometer involved in it. So they still honor their tradition. Let's head on through. DMA stands for what? What was DMA? Digital Marketing Association, Dominant Media Area, Dynamic Media Advertising, Designated Market Area. Great, 4 people got it. The DMA is Designated Market Area. So the country is grouped into more than 200 DMAs, and the purpose of that is it defines a territory in which the local stations compete with each other for ratings. And so that's what a DMA is. Number 3, in 1 million television household area, COPS is seen in 150,000 homes. What is its rating? So if we were going to do this, we'd be talking about it's a million, and it's 150,000 over 1 million, right? So this would be your calculation, because we said it's in a 1 million television household area. It means the universe is 1 million. So COPS is seen in 150,000 homes. What is its rating? Excellent, 15. Okay, so remember, when we solve this, basically, we can knock off those 3 zeros and those 3 zeros and one more here to bring it down to a calculation over 100, because that is a percentage. So we're getting 15 over 100, 15%. So the rating is 15. Okay, great, that's good. You guys know how to calculate what ratings are. Radio station ratings often measure audience in terms of what? Okay, we said this last class, but we didn't rehearse or review it this class. So radio stations, do they rate in minutes and seconds, or share, or average quarter hour, or diary household? Which one of those is most? All right, woo, okay. Yeah, we didn't review that today. So the correct answer is the average quarter hour, AQH. And the reason for that is that in radio, the song is about 3-4 minutes long, and people do a lot of channel switching to avoid commercials and stuff like that. So measuring on an average of every 15 minutes makes sense in radio. In television, the measurements are averaged out over 1 hour period. Because TV is divided into half-hour slots, you got half-hour shows, you got 1 hour shows, and people tend to sit down and just watch. Once they've settled in, they'll watch a full half hour or a full hour. But because there's so much channel switching in radio, and because the unit of like a song is short, they average it out over a quarter hour. So don't be disappointed if you got that one wrong, because we didn't cover that again today. But keep it in mind. So if a spot advertisement costs $100 and 1,000 people saw it, what is CPM? So remember, CPM is the cost per 1,000 people. So if 1,000 people saw this and it cost $100, what is the CPM? The correct answer was $100, okay? Because 1,000 people saw this and the cost of the campaign was $100, CPM 1,000 people saw it, so the answer is $100. A little bit tricky if you want, or maybe not tricky, but just so obvious a question that probably threw some people off. So remember CPM, the M is Roman numeral 1,000. So if I ask you a question and I say, hey, it costs, $150 to reach 1,000 people, you know that the answer is, well, it costs $150 to reach 1,000 people. CPM is 150, 150. So when Ford pays for half of a local car dealer's advertising, it is called what? What type of ad buy is that? When Ford pays for half and the car dealer pays for half. Is it run a schedule, cooperative advertising, barter agreement, or fixed cost advertising? Okay, so, oh my gosh, nobody got it. So cooperative advertising. Remember, cooperative advertising is when the national manufacturer chips in with the local car dealer, and together they buy the ad. So that is called cooperative advertising. It would be kind of like, if Wendy's, the national went into a advertising deal with all the Bay Area Wendy's. So you got the manufacturer going in with the local retailers. Okay, the PPM is a portable people meter, personal portable meter, personalized portable metric, point of use personal meter. So which one is it? Yes, so the people who answered got it right, the portable people meter. So that is, just wanted to show you what it looks like here. There it is. It's this little thing. It looks like an old school pager that clicks onto your belt or your handbag or whatever, and it just has a microphone in it, and it sends back the data, either from television or from radio if you're listening. It picks up those codes. But as we said, since everybody has a phone and the phone has a mic in it and the phone is connected right away, like I would predict that sooner or later there'll be a service which just uses your phone. Diary responses can be inaccurate, but ratings based on metering devices fix those problems. True or false? Did the PPM eliminate all of those problems? Oh, we got like a 50% right. So no, as we said, even if the PPM can very accurately pick up everything that you listen to, another problem that it doesn't solve is in accurately reflecting the true balance of groups in your audience, right? Because you only got about 100 or 200 people with PPMs, and they're standing in for like 1 million people. You got to make sure that if there's 10% Spanish speakers in your area, that 10% of people with PPMs have it, and that is a big problem, which still isn't solved. Ad exchanges are most common in which medium? Radio, cable, the internet, or television? So ad networks, or ad exchanges, is another word, are most common in which medium? Okay, the answer is internet, okay? So the ad exchange, as I mentioned a little while ago, when various websites were created by individuals or by small businesses, they don't have the size of audience which makes them competitive with big corporate sites like CBS.com. But by grouping hundreds or thousands of smaller websites, small businesses, into ad networks or ad exchanges, then they become very large audiences, So for instance, if you made a business and said, I'm going to go out and get the top 250 privately owned car sites, or the top 250 privately owned sites that deal with, makeup. Very different verticals, but the idea is you got a similar audience that comes to these sites who are interested in buying a car or interested in buying makeup. You put all those sites together, and now you get an audience which is a size and competitive with, the biggies in this industry. And then you have the technology to sell advertising on those 1,000 sites. You know, you send them a little bit of code, they put it into their web page, and when the consumer goes to their web page, a little bit of advertising, boop, pops up in there, which is supplied to you by the ad exchange. You don't have to go and do the selling. So ad exchanges are for online. Okay. Question 10. During November, February, May, and July, Nielsen sends diaries to sample homes around the country. So what is the name of those, you know, four times a year they do that national survey. So they sample homes all around the country. Very expensive. But those are called sweeps. Sweeps are the correct answer. Okay. Scatter ratings. I don't know why somebody came up with that, but sweeps is what happens 4 times a year for Nielsen, for television. Ratings explain why viewers and listeners prefer certain programs over others. True or false? Okay. It is false, right? The ratings only explain to us how many people watched. We have no idea why they watched. You know, whether they fell asleep in front of the TV and that was the next show that was on, or whether they are, you know, the biggest fan that ever existed for that show. We don't really know because the set-top boxes and the PPMs, they don't tell us that. So that type of information has to be done with marketing research where you get together, you know, 15 Big Bang Theory viewers and ask them what they thought of the show. Then you'll learn that type of thing. Barring an unlikely event, shares are always better than ratings. Yes, only one person answered, but they were right. This is true. Shares always larger than ratings. Okay, definitely. And let's go next up. Which of these is an actual audience measurement challenge faced by online advertisers? So online advertising, as we said, nowhere near as cut and dried as television advertising, where the ratings give us, you know, a clearly uncontested picture of audiences. So which of these, and it may be all of them, is an actual audience challenge? There are different ways of counting website visitors, depending on whether you're Nielsen or ComScore. There are different means of a sample selection and use of the different metering techniques, right? So all of these is the answer. In online, there is not one clearly leading way of doing this, which Nielsen provides for radio and television. Online, Nielsen is in online and they use the same techniques that they have for television, but there are competitors, and so there are all different ways of actually assessing audience. Which of the following is used to set online advertising rates? So we're talking about online, right? So there was CPM and there was other stuff too. So there's CPM, there's, okay, yes, we got it right. The number of hits on a page, which is CPM. The cost per click, which is when people click and do stuff. And then the CPT, cost per transaction. In other words, you actually have to do something in order for somebody to get paid. So that is good, excellent. And finally, audience activity is more important than audience size in mobile or social media ad campaign. Oh, it's a good thing we didn't get to that. But here the background is, I'll just give it to you anyway, but the background is basically, in addition to Nielsen, there's a whole movement now which says, well, let's look at how many people tweet about this show while it's on. Let's look about how many people liked the Facebook page or the Instagram page for this show. How many people got involved in some kind of fan activity or something. So that's all social media activity, which is now being counted into television ratings. You know, and this is not yet as well established as the Nielsen ratings and stuff, but it is important. If people tweet up a whole lot about a show, then that shows that they care about it, and that's worth something, it seems. But it's not that clear as to how much it's worth yet. So there you go. That is true. So we done for today. Next week we are going to review for that quiz and talk a little social media on Tuesday. Thursday is the quiz, and I'll send an email clarifying when we actually have to be here to do industry news presentation, which is not till November 15th. Okay. See y'all later.